As some of you might remember, I uploaded a video called the Masterplan Conspiracy Part 2 in December 2022. In the original video, I looked at the final Oasis album, Dig Out Your Soul, and asked, did Noel Gallagher plan, predict and then bring about the end of Oasis in 2009? And then, after a few months, I took the video down. But now, with the announcement of Oasis's reunion in August 2024, at last, I think the time is right. So, welcome to the Masterplan Conspiracy Part 2, presented by me in September 2024 and me in December 2022, when I had a much longer beard with much less white hair in it. I want to invite you to come with me on a journey. Song by song, we're going to look at the lyrics to Dig Out Your Soul and compare them to what was going on in real life at the time for Oasis. And as we move through the album, the bigger picture will slowly take shape. As we go deeper, layer by layer, it will seem easy to explain away at first, but the further we go, the clearer the pattern will become, and it will be apparent to at least some of you that this is not just some random assembly of songs, but a carefully curated set of chapters in a story, chosen by Noel Gallagher, that not only predicts the future, but does so accurately. Now, if at this point you're feeling sceptical, you have every right to be, but stick with it to the end, because there is, at the very least, a pretty good case to be made. In my first video, I looked at the most popular Oasis album, What's the Story Morning Glory, and discussed how, along with the B-sides, it seems to tell the chronological story of a year of Noel Gallagher's life. We talked about how it was telling the story of Noel Gallagher's lost love at that time in San Francisco, a girl called Melissa Lim, or Sally.
This next song's for Melissa.
After I made the first Masterplan Conspiracy video, I began wondering, are any other Oasis albums structured in a similar way, with a theme and a storyline running through them from start to finish? And then, a little while afterwards, I watched a documentary called Gold and Silver and Sunshine. It's the making of Dig Out Your Soul, the last Oasis album, and on that documentary, the band say this.
Most of the time, Oasis tunes are very uplifting. This album hasn't got too much of that on it. It's a bit more disillusioned and thoughtful. My song's got a bit of a religious theme, and in some of the other songs too, it's there
Seems to be a lot of the mentions of the light. I don't know why. I was listening back to the mixes in America and I was thinking, everything mentions the light. And I was like, again, there's a bit of a religious theme going on, but definitely biblical. And the guy that was doing the cover said, it's religious Armageddon. And I was like, wow, fucking hell. And we got into this heavy conversation. And I sat there after 10 minutes going, fucking hell, I only wrote a few fucking songs so I can go on tour and make a few quid. I don't need any of this shit. You know what I mean?
So why were Oasis making an album about the end of the world? Was some major ending on the cards for the band? At this time, in the run-up to the release of Dig Out Your Soul, there had been many ominous signs for years, and most of them were coming from Noel. All throughout the noughties, Noel Gallagher spoke openly about the idea of writing songs for a future solo career, and that idea seemed to grow on him until an actual timeline began to emerge in his mind. Listen to what Noel said on this exact same subject in March 2003. I see myself having another 5 years in the band, and then I'll do something else. I think it's sad when you're 40 and you're still pretending to be a gang. I won't be doing this when I'm 41. So, Noel had begun to come up with some kind of timeline. He wanted out at 41. And guess how old he was when the band released Dig Out Your Soul? That's right, 41. And now let's scroll forward another 2 years to 2005. Noel told the NME, "This is from the horse's mouth. We will only do a best of when we split up. We'll put out a best of when we stop. No best of or singles album until it's done and dusted." But then, within a year, it became apparent that Oasis were actually right about to release a singles collection after all. It was quite an ominous sign that Noel had not only announced a best of album, but that he had titled it Stop the Clocks. It's taken from the first line of a famous poem called Funeral Blues, a poem that, fittingly, is frequently read at funerals following the death of a loved one. Oasis were releasing a best of compilation that was named after a funeral poem. The signs that Oasis were drawing to a close were starting to mount up. But he didn't just name the album after a funeral poem, he even wrote a whole song about it. He didn't release that song until much later with the High Flying Birds. But let's look at those lyrics and see if they line up with this theory that he was already planning to bring Oasis to an end. Stop the clocks and turn the world around. Let your love lay me down. And when the night is over, there'll be no sound. Lock the box and leave it all behind, on the back seat of my mind. When the night is over, where will I rise? Look at those two opening lines. A massive change is coming. We've got Stop the Clocks, which is from a funeral poem, and Turn the World Around. What do you get when the world turns around? It's a new day. And he's singing to someone. Who is you in these lyrics? Well, the woman he loved at the time was Sarah McDonald, so we could perhaps see this as Noel singing to her. And then look at the next line. When the new day dawns, the music will come to an end. There'll be no sound. Interestingly, when Stop the Clocks was released, a collection of videos was also put out, which was named after this line: lock the box and leave it all behind. But it was a kind of inside secret at that time, because the song containing that line hadn't been released. Only Noel knew. So the fan base didn't realise that he had put out a video retrospective on the Oasis canon named after this line: lock the box and leave it all behind. I wonder if the Lock the Box videos were Noel's way of kind of closing the chapter on the classic Oasis songs. I wonder if that was kind of him saying goodbye and then pushing those songs and that band to the back of his mind. But am I reading too much into this? Quite possibly. But I'm not the only one who sees loads of little Easter eggs and hidden meanings in Noel Gallagher's stuff. His brother and bandmate of many years, Liam, did as well.
When you get to the songwriting, and like he had Songbird, and you made the album Stop the Clocks for the best of, and you put it together, you put an illustration for every song.
Yeah.
You put a red brick wall or something for Songbird.
Yeah. Well, should I tell you why that is?
He didn't. Well, because red is the colour of love. Is that it?
That's right.
That's a terrible answer for Liam.
That's right. Well, Liam being Liam, thought it was in his own head, thought it was a red toilet wall.
Was it?
No. I don't know what it's from. But, you know, there you go. Liam hasn't got a clue what he wants or what he feels or what he knows or what he thinks he knows. He exists in this own tiny little bubble, you know.
Here's a little more detail of that story from The Guardian. Oasis are about to release Stop the Clocks, their first retrospective. In the accompanying booklet, the lyrics for each of the 18 songs appear beside an image. The picture Noel chose to go next to Songbird, the only track written by Liam, was a red brick wall, because it's a love song about his bird, explains Noel, and red is the colour of love. But Liam didn't take it that way. I got a message on my answer machine, Noel sighed. He was like, the colour red, beside the song I wrote about my missus, who I've got a child with, how fucking dare you? Interestingly, when the album came out, that picture of a red brick wall had been moved. And now it's next to Champagne Supernova instead. But why would Liam react like that? Why would Liam have such an explosive reaction to a seemingly completely innocuous piece of artwork? To me at least, that only makes sense if you assume he knows that Noel's in the habit of leaving coded messages, digs and insults included in his work. Who knows what it was, but it obviously meant something unflattering to Liam and Nicole. Which brings us on very neatly to the most important part of setting the scene, the collapse of Noel and Liam. Noel did not enjoy the constant fighting and wanted it to stop. On June the 12th, 2005, Liam said this to Spin: "Noel and I don't speak to each other. That's probably best. We see each other, but I've got nothing to say to him. He's got nothing to say to me. We make music and that's it. He's totally different from me. I'm totally different from him. He's got different views. I've got different views." They travelled separately, stayed in separate rooms, did separate things on their days off, and didn't even send one another gifts on birthdays and Christmas. And this just gives you an idea of the tension in the band. This was in 2005, and it continued getting worse for another 4 years. Noel was withdrawing.
No, I think I annoy him greatly. And I understand that because I'm brilliant and I'm better than he is, you know what I mean? And that's fine, you know. And he annoys me. I wouldn't go out for a drink with him or anything like that. I wouldn't go to his house for Sunday lunch or anything like that. It always ends up in arguments about, you know, the track listing of Definitely Maybe or something, you know. Well, he's just another member of the band to me. Do you know what I mean? And I don't hang out with any of the other guys either. You know, I've got no particular favourites in the band.
Sure.
I'm you know, I was born a loner, you know, and yeah, I'm indifferent to him. He's obsessed with me.
Relations between Noel and Liam had devolved to the point that they were now both constantly taking pot shots at one another and airing their grievances in the press. They would make believe for a little while when there was an audience there or when the cameras were rolling, but behind the scenes, it seems like they basically hated each other. 11 months after Stop the Clocks, the band released a standalone digital single called Lord Don't Slow Me Down. And the cover to this single did little to dispel suspicion because the theme of death was still there. We just had Stop the Clocks, a song about death, and now we have a clockwork skull. And in one of the eyes of the skull we have Liam, Andy and Gem. In the other we have Noel. They are separated by a death. And this track, written and sung by Noel, contains many of the exact same sentiments in Stop the Clocks, but expressed with increasing anger and frustration. "I'm tired and I'm sick. I've got a habit that a cat won't lick. I feel hungover and I'm all in love. Let the lights go down. Me and you are gonna shoot them all." So here's Noel with someone he's in love with again, and he and that person are gonna shoot them all when the lights go down. Is he talking about Oasis here? Is he talking about him and Sarah wanting to escape the band and that life? Let's look at some more of the lyrics. "Alright, don't be afraid. You've got to keep dreaming in the bed you made. And if it tastes like shit, well, it beats sleeping rough on the floor." When you look at that second verse, you could really interpret this as being about his experience in the band. He's telling himself, you made your bed, now lie in it. And if it's a horrendous experience, at least you're paying your way and making enough money to keep a roof over your head. And here in the chorus of this song, we have the moment that leads us lyrically into Dig Out Your Soul. This is the first time we see the two most important references that show up constantly from this point forwards in that album. Firstly, a reference to dreaming of flying away up to the clouds, and secondly, a reference to God. A word that is frequently used by and of Oasis is biblical. And, fittingly, the concept that Noel seems to use repeatedly in this album is a biblical one. An apocalyptic concept called the rapture. Some Christians believe that a time will come at the end of days when they are tested to the limits of what they can endure. And then, at the end of this, the Messiah will return visibly in the sky, and all believers will rise up into the clouds to meet him. And from there, they will all leave the earth behind and go off to be with their Saviour forever in heaven. And now, at last, as we do a deep dive into Dig Out Your Soul, we are going to see in song after song constant references from Noel to going up into the sky, to taking off, to being raptured, to flying up into the clouds, to be with God. Noel talks about God, angels, messiahs, saviours, and all that kind of thing constantly. And in a later interview that seems fairly heartfelt and honest, he actually tells us who the character of God is in his songs.
There's a line in one of the songs off my latest record, and it's a song that I wrote about my wife, and it says, "You're the only God I'll ever need." And when I mention God and angels and all that seemingly biblical stuff in songs, my wife is an angel to me, and a real one, because she appeared out of the smoke in a nightclub when I was at my lowest, and I've never looked back since then. And to me, she is an angel. But she's not a heavenly body, she's real, I can touch her, do you know what I mean? And I do, regularly, and it's great.
So now let's move on to the album tracks themselves. The final Oasis studio album ever to be released, Dig Out Your Soul. Now on Dig Out Your Soul, we don't just have the tracks themselves. Many of them also have really interesting and revealing little sound bites and Easter eggs tagged on the end, linking one track to another.
It's all got a role, and even the gaps are important. But I don't know if people listen like that anymore. I know I do. I don't think we'd ever be the kind of band who go, "Oh, we're only ever going to do tracks."
Each of these little sound bites matters. Each of them helps to tell the story. So, with that in mind, let's start looking at the tracks, analysing the lyrics, and see if we can tease out what it is Noel was trying to communicate. Track 1 is Bag It Up, written by Noel and sung by Liam. In an interview with Q magazine, he unpacked the words just a little bit. Bag It Up is about the time I used to do psychedelic drugs. Slow pounding acid rock, The Pretty Things versus Pink Floyd on Glue. And of course, as anyone who's listened to it will realise, the psychedelic drug references are just completely open all the way through the song. But I'd like to suggest that this is actually a little bit of a smokescreen. It's not actually about literal drugs, but rather inviting us, the listeners, to go on a metaphorical psychedelic trip with him by listening to the album. Spin asked him, "You quit drugs in the late 90s. Bag It Up sounds quite psychedelic. Are you back on mood-altering substances?" Noel responded, "No. Bag It Up is my little artistic statement." The first line is, "Gold and silver and sunshine is rising up." There are, of course, different possibilities as to what this little phrase might mean, but I'd like to suggest it's a reference to heroin. The gold is the brown liquid, the silver is the heroin spoon, and the sunshine is the flame of the cigarette lighter underneath, heating the heroin so that it can be injected. The next line says, "Pour yourself another cup of Lady Grey." Do you remember when Noel got in trouble in January 97 for one of his most controversial statements about drugs? He said, taking drugs was like getting up and having a cup of tea in the morning. I wonder if that's what he's referencing here. Pour yourself a cup of Lady Grey. Come with me on this acid trip. Of course, not literally, he's not saying take drugs, he's saying come with me down the rabbit hole. Take my hand in the meantime, when you've had enough you'll find me on the end of a runway, babe. Here he's talking to someone he calls babe, so we can only assume it's Sarah. This could be a drug reference, but again I think all the drug references in this are figurative anyway. End of a runway, I think this is our first hint of the rapture. Tell the world that you love them in a melody. Send my old piano and a telegram. This is a sweet line, and it's a theme that runs right through this entire final canon of Oasis tunes. Noel's leaving, and he's telling the world, the Oasis fans, that he loves them through the music. We've got the melody and the harmony, the piano, and we've got the lyrics, the telegram. this is part of understanding what this album is. It's partly Noel's bittersweet goodbye to Oasis, but it's also his goodbye to us on behalf of Oasis. And he immediately explains why he has to say goodbye. Got to get me a doctor with a remedy. In Stop the Clocks we had Noel dying in darkness. In Lord Don't Slow Me Down we had him feeling tired and sick and hungover. Nothing's changed, he's still ill, he needs help. There's also a sound effect Easter egg on this track right at the very end. It's a massive explosion, a recording of plastic explosives going off. Now remember what Noel said about this album and the concept behind it.
A bit of a religious theme going on, but definitely biblical. And the guy that was doing the cover said, you know, it's religious Armageddon. I was like, wow.
The Oxford definition of Armageddon is a dramatic and catastrophic conflict, especially one seen as likely to destroy the world or the human race. So, I wonder if that's why we have a massive explosion here on the opening track. Is this the beginning of the end? Track 2 is called The Turning. It's written by Noel and sung by Liam, and this song is just openly about the rapture. He even mentions it in the lyrics. Eyes over the city, rise up from your soul, hang over the streets at night, brought on by the cold. He's dreaming of rising up into the air and looking down on the city. And look at that phrase, brought on by the cold. He's explaining why he has to go. In Stop the Clocks he called the band The Night. In Lord Don't Slow Me Down he said I'm tired and I'm sick. In Bag It Up he said he needed a doctor, he was ill. And here he describes the band as The Cold. We live with the numbers, mining our dreams for the same old song. And if there was any doubt that he was talking about the band, it doesn't get much more explicit than that. We keep doing what we're doing for the money, and that's all. And it's a hollow existence for Noel. And I love that phrase, mining our dreams for the same old song. He's got no inspiration anymore for Oasis. He's not just having to dig, he's having to mine, he's having to go deep, deep, deep to find anything to tick the Oasis box. Noel doesn't want to live in the past anymore. He doesn't want to write about being 20 and on the dole anymore. He wants to move on. So come on, shake your ragdoll baby before you change your mind. He's talking to someone he calls baby here, so I'm assuming Sarah again. Shake your ragdoll is a slightly unusual phrase, but I'm taking it to mean move your ass, get a move on, let's get out of here while we've got the motivation. Then come on, when the rapture takes me, be the fallen angel by my side. In the story, the rapture hasn't happened yet, but he's saying he can do it if she goes with him. If she's by his side, he can leave. And interestingly, he calls her his fallen angel, and the song that Noel Gallagher half adapted, kind of slightly nicked, for the chord sequence for this track is Devil Woman by Cliff Richard. He used the tune Devil Woman to sing about his fallen angel. Even the song he nicked lines up with the narrative. Yours is a Messiah, mine is a dream, and it won't be long. Sarah's role is that of the Messiah. As we looked at earlier on, he said, "You're the only God that I will ever need." And here in the lyrics to The Turning, we have that confirmed. Sarah is not going to be raptured with Noel, she's going to be the one rapturing Noel. She's the Messiah up in the clouds who's going to take him away to heaven. No hope for the journey if no one ever sees the dawn. Yet another example of Noel describing his experience in the band at this time like a night time that never ends. He's got no hope unless he leaves, unless the new day dawns. Then we come to the outro. It's a kind of tribute and adaptation of the riff from Dear Prudence by the Beatles. It's not exactly the same, but the pattern, the rhythm, the timbre are very, very close.
The bit after the turning was written the night before, the very, very, very last day of mixing. And I was sat in the hotel room, just finding about playing the guitar, and started playing that bit, and I was like, wow, that sounds brilliant coming off the end of that. Gave the guitar to Andy, said, you've got the finger picking style, sat him outside on a stool in LA, and that's the traffic going past.
Dear Prudence is literally about inviting a woman to come out of the darkness and into the sunshine, to come out and greet the brand new day. This could once again be seen as a reference to Noel inviting Sarah to come with him, to step out into the light of a new beginning, just like we've seen in literally every song so far. The next track is Waiting for the Rapture, and it's written by Noel and sung by him too. And it's the third song in a row that seems to be saying exactly the same thing again. Noel is singing to a woman and asking her to take him away from all this unhappiness. I still don't know what I was waiting for, a big love to fall down from the sky. She took my hand and picked me up off the floor. She put an apple in my eye. In this edition of Q magazine, from October 2008, Noel says this is a love song inspired by the meeting of an angel in Ibiza. And Andy Bell confirms it's about Sarah. To call someone the apple of my eye is to say you are the person I love the most in the entire world. The lyrics continue. I'm tired, come get me off the merry-go-round. I'm wired, come feed me and then bring me down. He's sick of it and he wants out. And in the midst of all this unhappiness, she's looking after him and calming him down. Now there's not many lyrics in this song, so let's go now to look at the funny little soundbite Easter egg at the end of the track. Because there we've got a funny little electric guitar part playing a bluesy riff. But if you listen closely, that's the song You Can Leave Your Hat On. That tune is a very well-known stripper song, and so I think the message there is fairly obvious. Noel fancies his missus, and fair enough, nothing wrong with that. And now we come to track 4. We've had 3 songs constantly looking forward to taking off into the skies, and now we have a song called The Shock of the Lightning. Is this the moment it finally happens? Is this when they finally take off into the sky? Look at these lyrics. I'm coming up in the early morning. I feel love in the shock of the lightning. I fall into the blinding light. I've got my feet on the street, but I can't stop flying. My head's in the clouds, but at least I'm trying. I think if we're going to take Noel at his word and interpret this album as a kind of biblical Armageddon, we have to view this as the moment of the rapture. If we're going to interpret it this way, this is the moment that the thing he's been singing about for the first 3 songs of the album actually happens. And I think this also represents the point at which the album stops talking about the now and starts looking forward and predicting the future. Remember, the rapture represents the moment that Noel leaves the band and flies away into the sunset. At the time this was written and recorded, it hadn't happened yet. And interestingly, in the lyrics, look what we have. Love is a time machine up on the silver screen, all in good time. We've got a reference to a sudden change in time frame. It is, quite literally, a time machine. It's taking us forward to a point in history that hasn't happened yet. It's all in my mind. Love is a litany, a magical mystery, all in good time. This verse reads as if he's laid out all his plans in his mind and is now just waiting for the stars to align. And I have to pick up on one other thing. This is a song about a lightning strike. And what do we get right in the middle after the lightning strike? We get thunder, a drum solo. If we want to have a bit of fun with this, we could see that as the thunderclap to end all thunderclaps, the one that crashes out all around the world after the lightning strike happens while everyone is flying.
When he did the drum solo, and my immediate reaction was, well, that's ridiculous. That's never going to get used. And of course, great, we used it.
And I love singing songs like that because you're not really singing them, you're just fucking flying, you know what I mean?
And then we come to the Easter egg in the outro. This one's pretty straightforward. It's Champagne Supernova, being played backwards. Someday you will find me, caught beneath the landslide, in the champagne supernova in the sky. Where's Noel just gone in the story? He's just been raptured. He's gone into the sky. And look at the single cover. It's a view of the Earth from the perspective of the champagne supernova. Can you see how it's all the colour of champagne? And we're seeing the world from the outside at the exact moment the rapture hits. You can see the shock of the lightning hitting the Earth. How cool is that? And remember, the artist was one of the few people with whom Noel went into detail about the concept behind the album. So the graphic artist did understand what the underlying story was meant to be. And interestingly, him and Noel actually spent longer on the artwork than the band did recording the songs.
Took us 2 months all in all.
Yeah.
November, we just went into Abbey Road and come out in December. We went to America in January and come back in February, so 2 months.
And then since then we've been waiting for them to finish the sleeve.
So 2 months recording the music, and at the time of that interview they were saying they haven't got the artwork back, so that's 4 or 5 months on the art. A month before the release of the first single, Oasis set out on the road for their 2008 to 2009 world tour, which actually turned out to be their goodbye tour. For a period of 1 year, from August the 26th in 2008 to August the 29th in 2009, Noel wrote a tour blog called Tales from the Middle of Nowhere. And that 1 year of a touring diary gives us a few fascinating little glimpses into what was on his mind at the time. The Roundhouse gig is up next. Can't speak for anyone else, but I promise that I'll be brilliant at those shows. Saying that, who knows where we'll be next year? There's plenty of time for the shit to hit the fan before then, eh? We speak at bad times for the Oasis tour. Bad times. We are a rudderless ship at the minute, and there's a fucking shitstorm on the horizon. I guess all will be revealed in due course. Strange atmosphere. Well, that gig at the Roundhouse was very odd. What's-his-name exploded with pretend rage the minute he walked on. Strange cat. Probably on his man period. Saying that, it was a full moon and all. Just come off stage at V in Stafford, and I don't mind admitting that I didn't enjoy it one bit. Couldn't get into it. Very strange. And then the final entry was this. Dearly beloved, it is with a heavy heart and a sad face that I say this to you this morning. As of last Friday, the 28th of August, I have been forced to leave the Manchester rock and roll pop group Oasis. The details are not important and of too great a number to list, but I feel you have the right to know that the level of verbal and violent intimidation towards me, my family, friends and comrades has become intolerable. And the lack of support and understanding from my management and bandmates has left me with no other option than to get me cape and seek pastures new. In closing, I would like to thank all the Oasis fans all over the world. The last 18 years have been truly, truly amazing. A dream come true. I take with me glorious memories. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a family and a football team to indulge. I'll see you somewhere down the road. It's been a fucking pleasure. Thanks very much. Goodbye. The two shows that Noel specifically references in the blog are the Roundhouse gig in London on the 21st of July 2009 and the V Festival gig on the 22nd of August. Liam pulled out the first night saying he had laryngitis, and so Noel fronted the band for the first night, but then Noel pulled out on the second night as well, and so the band never played their last ever UK tour date. According to the NME, Liam Gallagher dismissed tabloid speculation that the band were set to break up. He referenced reports in a newspaper column about that having been Oasis's last ever British gig, and he says that the journalist was talking out of his arse. I mean, our kids, as in Noel's. Now, it took some serious digging because this has long been taken down from the Sun website, but I have been able to track down that article, and this is what it said. If you were one of the lucky punters at V-Fest in Stafford on Saturday, you can now claim the honour of seeing the last ever Oasis gig on British soil. The V-Festival no-show is a hugely disappointing way for the curtain to come down on a brilliant summer and an unforgettable era for one of the best bands this country has ever produced. Like so many brilliant bands before them, Oasis are bowing out on bad terms. And, of course, despite Liam protesting that it wasn't true at the time, that Sun article turned out to be correct. So how on earth did they know this in advance? There can, of course, be only one answer. Noel Gallagher had already made his plans, and he told the journalist ahead of time. In fact, it seems to this day that Noel Gallagher has a special arrangement with the Sun newspaper, as they seem to have consistently been given behind-the-scenes exclusive information for many years now. Noel then went on the record to say Liam didn't have laryngitis but was hungover. Liam responded with a lawsuit saying he had medical evidence that it was laryngitis, and Noel quickly backed down. At this point, it really did look like Noel was trying to force something to happen. Liam and Noel were teetering right on the edge. And here is how it all came to a head. As the tour rolled around, all was not well, as Noel used his blog to repeatedly slag off his brother, and Liam began responding on his new Twitter page. The shows were a triumph, but with the two barely speaking, Liam off designing clothes and Noel flirting with psych rockers, the writing was on the wall. Oasis played their last UK show at the Stafford leg of the V-Festival 2009, messily exploding in France a week later. Before their gig in Paris, Liam was playing an acoustic guitar given to him by his wife. Noel took the piss, Liam hurled the guitar at him. Noel stamped on it, Liam retaliated by pulling over an entire rack of Noel's guitar, and Noel walked out. I think Noel had actually intended to leave after the final few dates of the tour were completed, but this event accelerated his schedule and he ended up leaving there and then. Let's go back to the album now and pick up the narrative there. The next track is song 5. It's called I'm Out of Time, written and sung by Liam. It all eerily lines up, doesn't it? Let's look at the lyrics. Here's a song. It reminds me of when we were young. Who's he singing to here? It's Noel, isn't it? He's doing what he's frequently done since on many of his solo album tracks. He's singing to or about his brother. Looking back at all the things we've done, you've got to keep on keeping on. Once again, more confirmation, he's singing about Noel. Who did he attain all his greatest life achievements with? His brother. Out to sea is the only place I honestly can get myself some peace of mind. You know it's getting hard to fly. You have to remember, this was written by Liam in that last phase of the band. Noel apparently wasn't the only one feeling unhappy and demotivated in Oasis. Here we have a line written by Liam at the end of Oasis but before the split, saying he's not happy when they're together, he's only happy when he gets away from it all. And even for Mr. Determination, Liam himself, it's getting hard to fly. He's struggling to dig out his soul. If I'm to fall, would you be there to applaud or would you hide behind them all? He realises that if something happens and his life comes crashing down, there will only be one of two responses from Noel: mocking applause or silence. Noel no longer has any love for his brother, and Liam knows it. 'Cause if I have to go, in my heart you grow, and that's where you belong. Despite having just said he realises Noel doesn't care for him in any way anymore, Liam says nonetheless he loves Noel and always will. I guess I'm out of time. And there you have the most revealing line and the title of the song. I don't think this was written specifically about the collapse of the band, but the collapse of his relationship with Noel, and I think he knew it's probably too late now. And there does seem to be an element of him saying, and it probably is my fault, because he doesn't say, you're out of time, he says, I'm out of time. So it seems to me that this song is a bit of a lament. It's written by Liam to say he realises he's probably lost his brother forever. Noel is probably never coming home, and there's a really interesting little soundbite buried in the outro of this song, once again confirming everything.
As Churchill said, it's the Englishman's inalienable right to live where the hell he likes. So what do you think? It's going to vanish? It's not going to be there when I get back?
But you like John Lennon a lot.
Love that, man.
And you sample his voice in a tribute song. Why that decision? That's cool.
I just fancied sampling. The song sort of goes round and round at the end, and it needed something there, I thought. So me and Gem sat down, went through a couple of interviews, and that one seemed to pop out. It's like, you know, that's the kind of magic, you know what I mean? It sort of fitted with it, and there you go.
This is an excerpt from a John Lennon interview where he talks about having left his home in England and moved to America. And I do wonder what Liam was trying to say with this clip. Just as if John Lennon ever did want to go back, England would still be there, perhaps Liam was saying that if Noel ever does want to patch things up and come back, he will still be there as well. But now, having talked about a song written by Liam included in the track listing, there are a few questions we now need to address. If this is a concept album, if this has been put together according to this kind of far out conspiracy theory, were the rest of the band in on it? I think we have to say no.
I mean, a few of the songs have got a bit of, I guess, religious imagery in them, but it doesn't mean that we're made that a theme from the beginning. It's just the way that our collective songs turned out.
We haven't sat down and gone, right, let's make a concept album, because that's just ridiculous. We all do our own thing, and then it all comes together, and it's sort of tied in. So I think that's where the magic is on the record. You know what I mean? That we didn't sit down and go, right, let's write songs about that.
It's like
we've all just done our thing and put it all together, and that's just the way it is. But that's magic, you know. Sometimes it happens, sometimes it doesn't happen.
To the band, it just seemed to coincidentally have a theme. It just seemed to kind of randomly work out that way. But who was it who selected the songs and sorted out the track listing? Noel.
Our method is Abbey Road,
LA,
and mix it in LA and let Dave Sadie produce it.
Yeah, so Dave is your guy now, you think, for the foreseeable future?
Let Noel decide what tunes are on it, and that's it.
And when you realise how many songs he had to choose from, it seems less of a coincidence and perhaps a little more intentional that the album turned out the way it did. They had 50.
I wish our music got more dated, because we've got a backlog of about 50 songs, and it would be good if some of them were out of date, but they're not. They just stay modern.
So perhaps Noel was choosing the right songs from here, the right songs from there, and assembling them in the way he wanted to tell the story he wanted to tell. What do you think? In the NME, Gem said this of Noel. Noel knows exactly what he wants to go for. He can hear it all in his head. Being with him when he's layering is like watching someone painting. Layer 2 won't make any sense until layer 4 is on. The next song on the album is Get Off Your High Horse Lady, written and sung by Noel. And at first glance, this song looks like a really strange choice. It looks a bit jarring, like it somehow screws up the narrative of the story. Thus far in the story, every time Noel has sung to a lady, it's been to Sarah, the love of his life. Get off your high horse is a phrase usually used to tell someone to stop being bossy, stroppy or overbearing. So is Noel having a go at Sarah here? Get off your high horse lady, I don't need a ride tonight, lay down. This is the first of the 2 short lines that make up the entirety of the lyrics to this song. And, just like in Bag It Up, the surface meaning, the first impression, that's a distraction. He is talking to Sarah, his lady, but remember who she is in this story. She's the Messiah up in the sky, rapturing him, taking him away to heaven. Now when you look at the Bible, in the book of Revelation chapter 19, we find out that when the Messiah appears, it is on a white horse in the heavens. So the Messiah literally appears on a high horse, as in high in the sky. Noel is telling her to get off the horse because they've arrived. She doesn't need it anymore. He doesn't need a ride. They're already there. And at last, they can lie down together in peace. I hear your soul song singing from a fire in the sky, rain down. This is the only other line in the song, and from it you get a sense of Sarah's happiness at now having escaped with Noel. And we're also seeing in Noel's songs a progression of the sunrise. In the first part of this sequence of songs, he was constantly talking about being trapped in the night. In Shock of the Lightning, we have the first mention of the early morning. Now, in Get Off Your High Horse, we have a fire in the sky. The sun is rising higher and higher. And we'll see that trend continue on into Noel's last song on the album. But before we move on to that, we've got another little Easter egg hidden down in the outro.
You know the bit where the guy's walking up the beach, crunching away? To me, there's all the Quadrophenia references, but as well it could be Get Carter.
It's quite psychedelic and Pink Floyd-ish. What it's got to do with the fucking song, I don't. And it was my idea.
So there we've got the sound of a beach. It ties in nicely, doesn't it? The story seems to imply they have now landed in their dream heavenly escape, and so therefore we have the sound of footsteps on a beach. They've got to heaven. They've reached the fire in the sky. At last, Noel can relax in the sunshine. And now, look at what we get in the very first line of the next song, Falling Down. The summer sun, it blows my mind. It's falling down on all that I've ever known. Time will kiss the world goodbye. Falling down on all that I've ever known. It does seem to fit the story like a glove. In this hypothetical story, at this point, Noel has escaped Oasis and is happier. This song is both written and sung by Noel, and it's his last one on the album. Dying scream makes no sound. Here I am, lost and found. We live a dying dream, if you know what I mean. In the first chapter of this story, we had the line, when the night is over, there'll be no sound. Well, we've now come full circle, and that death he sang about right at the beginning in Stop the Clocks, the funeral song, has happened. And the sound, the music, has stopped. But the main refrain in this song is probably the most revealing because it explains from Noel's perspective why he left. Catch the wheel that breaks the butterfly. I cried the rain that fills the ocean wide. This is a reference to another poetic saying, breaking a butterfly on a wheel. A wheel is a Catherine wheel. It's a medieval torture instrument used to break human bones. Breaking a butterfly on a wheel is about using ridiculous amounts of brute force against a vulnerable target. And that's a really revealing phrase, which shows that despite the gruff exterior, he was actually really battered and wounded by many of the fights with Liam. He's not really public about any of it, other than in his lyrics. But if you choose to interpret them this way, it does seem clear that he is a heartfelt guy. Here he says, catch the wheel, meaning stop it turning. He's literally saying it's time to stop the machinery that puts me on the receiving end of constant needless aggression. And I see this song as kind of ending the second act of the album. In Act 1, starting with the funeral song Stop the Clocks, Noel Gallagher predicted his metaphorical death. And all the songs in that act are about looking forward to it. In Act 2, the lightning finally strikes, and Noel, metaphorically, dies. He might as well have called Falling Down Dead. Every song that follows is written by the other band members, because at this point, Noel's part in the story of Oasis is over. And so now, let's move on to the third and final act of the album, Those Who've Been Left Behind. The band didn't actually have a permanent drummer at this time, and in publicity shots you just see the four of them, Noel, Liam, Andy and Gem. So what we have here is the rest of the band's reaction. I don't think that's what they wrote the songs about, but I think that serving that larger overarching storyline might have been why Noel selected these songs over others. And because I don't think any of these last 4 songs were written in quite the same way that Noel's were, I'm not going to approach them in the same way either. I'm not going to do a proper deep dive into the lyrics to these songs, but rather I'm going to look more at what maybe Noel was trying to say by putting them where he did in the track listing. So let's start with track 8, To Be Where There's Life. This one's written by Gem and sung by Liam. And I think it's been put here to represent Gem's personality. It's a song of calm, thoughtful, determined perseverance. Dig out your soul, 'cause here we go. We gotta move, it's what we do. Let me come through, let me take you, and we're away to be where there's life. Gem has always struck me from a distance as a person with sort of relentless optimism. Here he seems to be saying, come on, let's pick ourselves up and move on. Find your inner strength and let's crack on. And who knows what Gem wrote that about, but doesn't it sit well with the storyline? There's a reason that the line "Dig Out Your Soul" was chosen as the title of the album. In the context of the song, it's saying search within and find the strength to keep putting one foot in front of the other. And of course, that is what they did. After Oasis split, Gem, Andy, Liam and Chris Sharrock, who was drumming for them at the time, went on to form BDI. And here I think we see another key line that could explain part of why Noel chose to put this song here. The phrase "to be where there's life," which is repeated throughout, fits in suspiciously well with this hypothetical album story of Noel being kind of metaphorically dead. And now that metaphorical death has happened, he's left Oasis, we get a song where the rest of the band are singing about being where there's life. Noel's gone, they're still living. But it's also possible that maybe Noel picked this song because it represents the response he expected from Gem. Pretty chilled but forward focused and always hopeful in the face of hard times. In his comments after leaving Oasis, Noel hit out at Andy and kind of generally at the band, but he never said very much negative about Gem. In his final days in Oasis, Noel admitted he was feeling pretty isolated and lonely. But throughout that time, he was still pretty close to Gem. In Gold and Silver and Sunshine, he talks about going round Gem's house and recording demos and having to stop because the kids came home from school. He and Gem were quite close, and 2 years after the split, Noel went on the record specifically to say he missed him. It might therefore come as no surprise that 4 years later, in 2015, Noel and Gem reunited and were performing together once again live at Lincoln. Gem is now Noel's regular guitarist, and I think during that phase of Oasis, he was Noel's closest friend in the band. I think it hit Gem quite hard when Noel left. To Be Where There's Life finishes with another little soundbite Easter egg. It's a mad backwards riff that sounds very like Baby You're a Rich Man by the Beatles. Once again, just like the Dear Prudence reference, it's not exact, it's kind of in the same vein, but very, very similar. And I like that. I think that's a great little touch and another little subliminal message, because even though the band had collapsed, they were all rich men as a result. The next tune is Aint Got Nothing, written by Liam and sung by him. And Liam wrote this song about the ending of legal action against him following a massive brawl in a hotel in Munich. They got nothing on me anymore, they got nothing on you. I don't care what they say anymore, all I want is the truth. Following the breakup of Oasis, the truth about what actually went down in those final moments backstage has actually never fully emerged. But I think in many ways, at the time, Liam felt kind of framed by Noel. Shortly after the bust-up in Paris, Noel held a press conference where he said this.
It kind of all started to unravel, if I'm being honest, when he started his clothing label. He demanded that in the Oasis tour programme that he be allowed to advertise it, which I was against, because I didn't think that it was right for him to be flogging his gear to our fans. And there was a massive row about that. It kind of went back and forward for a bit, as I remember it, and in the end I said, all right, well, if you want to advertise in the programme, how much? And he couldn't get his head around that, and I was like, well, if, Electrolux kettles, want to advertise kettles in the tour programme, they pay us money, right? So how much are you going to pay me? And he hit the roof, and it slowly went downhill from there.
However, this is what Andy Bell said afterwards about that in an interview with the Japan Times. Our conversation takes place just 2 days after Noel accused Liam of feigning laryngitis and making unreasonable demands on Oasis in relation to his clothing range, Pretty Green. Bollocks, Andy replies in a heartbeat. He lied about a lot of things. The argument about Pretty Green was lies, and what he said about V Festival and the fake laryngitis was lies. It's almost as if Noel was trying to manufacture the end of the band. Out on bail, to unveil, here's a song, sing along. Watch my style, pick a place, wipe the smile from your face. Once the dust had settled and Liam had moved on from Oasis, he was actually really excited to start recording and releasing new music. He said, we'll do it in a different kind of way now, and I'm feeling confident about the songs. I'm feeling 1,000,000% confident that they could be better than Oasis. Liam seems to be saying he will prove the doubters wrong. And, just like Gem's song, this defiant statement is a great representation of what Liam's reaction actually was to the ending of Oasis. And now it's time for Andy Bell, who, true to character, reacts thoughtfully and philosophically. Track 10 is The Nature of Reality, written by Andy Bell and sung by Liam, and it's another song containing just a few very short lines of lyrics. The nature of reality is pure subjective fantasy. Space and time and here and now are only in your mind. Andy's reaction to the whole thing is interesting. We already looked at a little bit of what he said in the Japan Times, but let's look at the next part of that interview now. He lied about a lot of things. The argument about Pretty Green was lies. What he said about V Festival and fake laryngitis was lies. But Andy suddenly holds back. I don't know. Maybe he's convinced that's the truth. I don't know what goes on in his head. I know him, so I'm not disappointed. That's what he's like. I know how he spins the press. He's used the press for years. Interviews and press are secondary for us, but that's his life. Do you see the conflict there in Andy? He seems to get the sense that there is something else going on that he doesn't quite understand. And reading this interview, he's grappling to find some missing piece of information. Judging by this interview, Andy has come out of the whole thing with a fairly low opinion of Noel. That interview continues. That's just Noel being Noel, Andy says. All that shit. There were 3 of us in that room, and I'm telling you it was nothing to do with Pretty Green. So who were the 3 people in the room when the fight happened? Liam, Noel, and Andy. Andy continues, I'm not going to add more fuel to the fire, but I've ended up in a band with Liam, Gem, Chris, with the same management, road crew. Bell trails off, but then perks up. But at the same time, I wish him all the best. I want him to be happy. The first 2 lines of this song are Andy saying, we never really know what's real. And once again, isn't that eerily close to what happened? He didn't know why Noel did what he did, and he's saying to everyone out there, the story Noel's telling you isn't true either. And there we have it for the 3rd time. Andy's song accurately predicts how Andy would react to the end of Oasis. And now on to the last song on the album. Soldier On is written and sung by Liam again, and once again it contains hardly any lyrics. Hold a light, friend of mine, sing a song, soldier on. Shine a light for me tonight, don't be long, soldier on. It's pretty straightforward, isn't it? It's Liam summing up the response of the whole band. We're going to keep shining a light and we're going to press on. Who's to say that you were right and I was wrong, soldier on. Come the day, come the night, I'll be gone, soldier on. Interestingly, Noel is actually playing drums on this song. They're all still making music, but just in a different way. And the track ends with a sound like a studio tape machine breaking. It's almost as if the tape that the record was recorded on is being chewed up and destroyed round and round and round on the reels. And that's it. The end of Oasis. No more music and the sound of the equipment breaking, as if to underline this. And so, this is how I would divide this album up. 3 distinct sections, 3 acts. Act 1, I think we could confidently name Waiting for the Rapture. Act 2 is where Noel and Sarah metaphorically die. So how about The Death of You and Me? And in Act 3, those who are left behind press onwards, but in a different way. So let's go with different gear, still speeding. But that's not the only place you can see this little 3-act play. I can't be the only one who noticed that you can see the exact same 3-act play by just lining up the titles of the last 3 singles. A man is struck by lightning, is out of time, and falls down dead. Some of you guys out there must also surely have noticed how suspicious the names of the final 3 Oasis singles are. At some point, the coincidences have to stack so high that they stop being coincidences. Surely. And that is where the album ends, but not the story. There is actually one more song we haven't looked at. Noel isn't completely missing from Act 3, we just didn't get his final contribution until 11 years later. On April the 30th, 2020, Noel Gallagher released a song called Don't Stop, under the Oasis name. Now, Noel has released loads of demos and recordings since leaving Oasis, and this is the only one he didn't release under his own name. This one he released as Oasis. Why? Why for just one demo did he release it under the Oasis name? My guess is it's because it belongs with the final Oasis tracks. It's the final part of the puzzle. It's the closing moment of the last canon of Oasis songs. Upon its release, Noel tweeted this: "Hey there dudes and dollies, like the rest of the world I've had infinite time to kill lately, so I thought I'd finally look and find out what was actually on the hundreds of faceless unmarked CDs I've got lying around in boxes at home. As fate would have it, I've stumbled across an old demo which I thought had been lost forever. As far as I'm aware, there is only one version of this tune out there from an Oasis soundcheck in Hong Kong about 15 years ago. I know some of you love this tune, so we thought we'd put it out there for you to enjoy and argue over." Here is that soundcheck recording he referenced, and it wasn't 15 years earlier, it was actually in April 2009 on the Dig Out Your Soul World Tour. I think while he was out around the world, it started to sink in, kind of on the inside, that, wow, this is it. This is the last ever Oasis tour. The last time round the world with the band that had been his entire life for his entire adulthood. I wonder if, as he saw the thousands and thousands of fans night after night around the world, it kind of melted his heart a little bit, and he decided to write a proper goodbye. The whole song is really sweet and obviously written from Noel to the fans. And so he opened Dig Out Your Soul and closed that final era with exactly the same thing on his mind. Tell the world you love them with a melody. So rather than going line by line on Don't Stop, I'm just going to read you the lyrics because they completely speak for themselves. They need no explanation really. It's just a quite touching, heartfelt letter from Noel to the Oasis fans. Bye bye my friend, I'm leaving. I'm going to feast on the stars in the sky. And while I'll be gone, don't stop dreaming. Don't be sad and don't cry. 'Cause lazy days and sunny rays will guide me back home to where I belong. If God gives me grace, then he will find me a space, and I hope I'll be singing this song. Don't stop being happy. Don't stop your clapping. Don't stop your laughing. Take a piece of life. It's alright to hold back the night. From time to time, though we're whole worlds apart, you will still hold a groove in my heart. From time to time, we will fall side by side, and you'll still have that look in your eye. But now, we've come to the end, and I wonder what you think. Have I convinced you that there does seem to be some kind of story encoded into the lyrics and the track listing of Dig Out Your Soul? I wonder if your curiosity has been piqued by odd little facts that don't quite sit right, like the fact that Noel told the Sun newspaper the band was over before the final fight had happened. Connecting all these dots in the way I have might be right or it might be wrong, but surely all these things can't be completely disconnected either. And here the first version of this video ended, but Noel and Sarah then split up a few weeks later. Since then, Noel has come back down from the skies, metaphorically speaking, rejoined the world and rejoined the band. Now that Oasis have reunited, I wonder if we are going to get some new material. And I wonder if that new material will also make sense in light of the concepts we've been talking about in this video. In a famous interview with Esquire, Noel once said that Liam thinks of him as some kind of puppet master in control of the media. Of course, we're playing with the idea of conspiracy theories here. So what if Liam was right? What do you reckon? Is Noel some chess grandmaster genius playing a vast game on the world stage? Is he just some northern shit kicker who can write good songs and got lucky? Or is he somehow both of those things? Or am I just some random YouTuber who is taking the piss, having a bit of a laugh, and winding everybody up? I don't know. What do you think?